The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never seen such chaos. Representatives from hundreds of worlds shouted over each other, their voices mixing into a terrible noise that echoed off the crystal walls. Some had tentacles that waved wildly in the air. Others had multiple heads that argued with themselves. The beautiful singing voices of the bird-like species now screeched in panic. At the center of it all stood Ambassador Taemin of the Velkan Republic. His blue skin had turned pale and his normally steady hand shook as he held the datapad. The news he brought would change everything. Silence. Council leader Sojin's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Her silver hair gleamed under the lights as she stood tall on the central platform. The room slowly quieted, though fear still hung in the air like smoke. Taemin cleared his throat and began to speak. His words were simple, but they hit the council like physical blows. The Devourers have awakened. The void barrier is failing. They have begun to move toward our galaxy. The silence that followed was worse than the shouting. Every being in the room knew the stories. 3,000 years ago, the Devourers had swept through half the galaxy like a plague of metal and death. They consumed everything, planets, stars, entire civilizations. Nothing could stop them. They had only retreated when they grew tired of feeding, sleeping beyond the great barrier that separated the galaxies. Now they were awake and hungry again. How long do we have? Sojin's voice was steady, but Taemin could see the fear in her large dark eyes. Our best estimates give us 6 months before they reach the Outer Rim colonies, maybe less. Taemin touched his datapad, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed the galaxy as a 3-dimensional map of lights. Dark shapes moved at the edges like hungry shadows. General Hyunwoo stepped forward. He was a tall, proud member of the warrior race from Sigma Draconis. His people had never lost a battle in over 1,000 years. But even he looked shaken. I have run every possible battle scenario through our computers. We have combined our fleets from 200 worlds. We have weapons that can crack planets and shields that have never been broken. He paused and looked around the room. It will not be enough. Even if every ship in the galaxy fights together, we have less than a 3% chance of victory. The Devourers have grown stronger during their sleep. Their weapons are beyond our understanding. The room erupted again. Some representatives called for immediate evacuation. Others demanded they fight anyway. A few suggested surrendering and hoping the Devourers would show mercy. In a quiet corner of the Great Hall, a small figure sat alone. Ginny was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life forms. Most of the other council members barely noticed her. She was not a politician or a general. She was just a researcher who spent her time reading old files and forgotten records. But Ginny knew something the others did not. In her years of research, she had found classified documents that most people were not allowed to see. Files about species that had been declared too dangerous to contact, races that had been locked away or destroyed because they threatened the peaceful order of the galaxy. One file had always puzzled her. It told the story of a species from a small yellow star in the outer spiral arm. They called their homeworld Earth, and they called themselves humans. According to the records, they had been quarantined in their own solar system over 5,000 years ago. The file was marked with the highest level of danger warnings. It said the humans were violent, unpredictable, and absolutely ruthless in war. They could not be trusted. They could not be controlled. They were too dangerous to exist alongside civilized species. But there was something else in the file that had caught Ginny's attention. A small note buried deep in the military reports. During the Great War against the Devourers, a human ship had been found drifting in space. The crew was dead, but their ship was filled with Devourer technology. Somehow these primitive humans had fought the Devourers and won. Ginny stood up slowly. Her heart was beating fast as she walked toward the center platform. She was nobody important, but she had to speak. "Council Leader Sojin," she called out. Her voice was small compared to the others, but something in her tone made people listen. "I may know of another option." Sojin looked down at her with surprise. "Xenobiologist Ginny, this is not the time for academic theories." "With respect, Council Leader, this is exactly the time." Ginny's hands trembled as she pulled out her own datapad. "There is a species in the quarantine zone of the Sol system. They are classified as extremely dangerous, but the records show they once fought the Devourers." The room fell silent again. Everyone knew about the quarantine zones. They were systems where dangerous species were locked away from the rest of civilization. Most had been destroyed long ago. The few that remained were strictly forbidden territory. "You speak of humans. General Hyunwoo said with disgust. I have read those files. They are savages. They fight wars over resources they do not even need. They kill their own kind for sport. They cannot be reasoned with. Yes, Jin'e said quietly. That is exactly what the files say. But the files also say they survived contact with the Devourers. No other species in the galaxy can make that claim. Taemin shook his head. Even if your theory is correct, we cannot reach them. The Sol system is surrounded by automated defense platforms. Ships that try to enter are destroyed instantly. It has been that way for thousands of years. Then we send a message, Jin'e said. We tell them what is coming. If they are as dangerous as the files claim, perhaps they will see the Devourers as a threat worth fighting. So Jin was quiet for a long moment. She looked around the room at all the representatives of the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. They had built beautiful cities on 1,000 worlds. They had created art and music and poetry that could make angels weep. They had brought peace to the stars for 3 millennia, and none of it would matter if the Devourers returned. The risks are enormous, so Jin said finally. If we contact the humans and they respond, we may be inviting something worse than the Devourers into our galaxy. And if we do not, Jin'e replied, we will all be dead in 6 months anyway. The vote was close. Many representatives refused to even consider the idea. Others argued that death was preferable to dealing with humans. But in the end, fear won over pride. So Jin raised her hand and the Great Seal of the Galactic Council glowed behind her. I hereby authorize first contact with the quarantined species of the Sol system. May the ancestors forgive us for what we are about to unleash. 3 days later, a single probe was launched toward the edge of the galaxy. It carried a simple message in every known language, including the primitive human tongues found in ancient databases. The message was short and desperate. We are dying. The Devourers have returned. Help us and we will give you anything you ask for. The probe disappeared into hyperspace, racing toward a small yellow star that most of the galaxy had forgotten. Behind it, 1 trillion souls waited to see if they had just saved themselves or doomed everyone in the universe. In the depths of space, ancient machines began to stir. The Devourers had tasted the electromagnetic signature of the probe, and they remembered the flavor of fear. They picked up speed, hungry for the feast that awaited them. But in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, something else was stirring too. Something that had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The response came faster than anyone had expected. Just 2 weeks after the probe was sent, the long-range sensors detected something impossible. A ship was approaching the council station. A ship from the direction of the Sol system. Panic spread through the station as the vessel came into view on the main screens. It looked nothing like the elegant ships of the Galactic Council. Where their ships were smooth and beautiful, this one looked like it had been built in a scrapyard. Metal plates were welded together in rough patterns. Strange symbols were painted on the hull in bright colors. Parts of it looked like they had been torn from other ships and stuck on wherever they would fit. It is definitely human, reported sensor operator Kyung Min from his station. His voice shook slightly. But our readings make no sense. The ship shows massive energy signatures, but the construction looks primitive. Council leader So-jin stood on the command bridge, watching the strange vessel approach. Part of her hoped the humans would just fly past and leave them alone. But she knew that was not going to happen. They are requesting permission to dock, Communications Officer Yoon Seo announced. The message is in perfect galactic standard. They also included greetings in 47 other languages, including some that have been dead for centuries. How do they know our languages? General Hyunwoo demanded. The Sol system has been cut off for thousands of years. Before anyone could answer, the human ship was already docking. It moved with casual confidence, as if the pilot had done this 1,000 times before. The magnetic clamps engaged with a solid thunk that echoed through the station. Should we send a full honor guard? Asked Captain Dongjin of station security. No, Sojin decided. A small group only. We do not want to appear threatening, but we also do not want to show weakness. 20 minutes later, the airlock doors opened with a soft hiss. Sojin, General Hyunwoo, Ambassador Taemin, and Jin'e waited in the main docking bay. Around them stood 24 of the finest soldiers in the galaxy, trying to look calm and professional. The first human through the door was tall and lean, with dark hair and sharp eyes. He wore a simple blue uniform that looked comfortable rather than formal. Behind him came 11 others, each looking relaxed and confident. They walked like people who owned whatever space they happened to be standing in. "Good morning," the first human said in perfect galactic standard. His voice was pleasant and casual, as if he was greeting old friends instead of meeting aliens for the first time in thousands of years. "I am Captain Minho of the Earthship Indomitable. Thank you for your message. We got here as quickly as we could." So Jin had prepared a formal speech for this moment. She had practiced the proper diplomatic protocols for hours, but something about the human's casual manner threw her off balance. "Welcome to Council Station Alpha," she managed to say. "I am Council Leader So Jin. We are grateful that you responded to our call." "No problem," Captain Minho replied with a slight smile. "Though I have to say your timing is interesting. We were wondering when you folks would finally decide to call us." General Hyunwoo stepped forward, his military training taking over. "What do you mean by that, human?" "Just that we have been monitoring your communications for quite a while now," said a woman with short black hair who stood beside the captain. "I am Engineer Yunji, by the way. Your quantum radio signals are not as secure as you think they are." The council members exchanged worried glances. Their communications were protected by the most advanced encryption in the galaxy. "But let's talk about why you called us," Captain Minho continued. "You mentioned the Devourers in your message. That is a name we have not heard in a long time." Ambassador Taemin began to speak, using the formal tone he had practiced for diplomatic meetings. "Captain Minho, we face a crisis of unprecedented magnitude. The ancient enemy known as the Devourers has awakened from their slumber beyond the void barrier. Our military analysts estimate they will be here in about 4 months," Captain Minho interrupted gently. "Give or take a few weeks depending on how many stops they make to feed along the way." The silence that followed was deafening. General Hyunwoo was the first to find his voice. "How could you possibly know that?" "Our best intelligence estimates 6 months. A thin man with glasses stepped forward from the human group. "I am Tactical Officer Dong Hyun," he said. "We have been tracking Devourer movements for the past 3,000 years. Your estimates are based on their old travel patterns. They have gotten faster." "But that is impossible," Jine spoke up for the first time. "The Sol system is quarantined. You cannot have ships beyond your solar system." The humans looked at each other and began to laugh. It was not cruel laughter, but there was something unsettling about how amused they seemed. "Oh, that old thing," said Engineer Yunji with a wave of her hand. "We figured out how to get past those defense platforms about 4,000 years ago. We just never saw any reason to announce it." Captain Minho nodded. "We have been exploring the galaxy for quite some time now. We have research stations in 17 different systems, trading posts in 8 more. A few mining operations in the asteroid belts of systems you probably think are empty." General Hyunwoo's face had gone pale. "You have been violating galactic law for millennia. The quarantine exists for good reasons, does it?" asked a young woman with bright eyes who had been silent until now. "I am Medic Hierin. We have been observing your civilization for generations. You have built something beautiful and peaceful, but you have also grown soft." "What do you mean by that?" Sojin demanded. Captain Minho answered her. "You have forgotten how to fight a real war. Your conflicts are about trade disputes and border disagreements. You have rules for everything. Protocols and procedures and committees to decide when it is appropriate to fire a shot. Civilization requires rules," Ambassador Taemin said stiffly. "Yes," Captain Minho agreed. "But the Devourers do not care about your rules. They care about feeding. They care about growing. They care about consuming everything in their path until there is nothing left but empty space and metal." General Hyunwoo pulled out his data pad and activated the holographic display. "We have run every possible scenario through our military computers. Even with your help, the numbers do not add up. We need more ships, more weapons, more soldiers than exist in the entire galaxy." The humans gathered around the display, studying the battle projections with casual interest. Engineer Yunji pointed at several spots on the tactical map. "Your formations are too rigid. You are thinking about this like a traditional space battle. And your weapons are not designed for Devourer armor," added Tactical Officer Dong Hyun. "Plasma cannons and particle beams work fine against normal ships, but Devourer hulls are self-repairing. You need something that can disrupt their molecular structure. Such technology does not exist," General Hyunwoo protested. Captain Minho smiled again, and this time there was something predatory in his expression. "Actually, it does. We have been using Devourer technology to improve our coffee makers for the past 100 years." The statement was so absurd that nobody knew how to respond. Ginny was the first to understand what he was really saying. You have fought them before, she whispered. And you won. Won is not the right word, Captain Minho replied. We survived. We learned. We adapted, and when they went to sleep, we made sure we would be ready for when they woke up again. Medic Hiron stepped closer to the holographic display. The problem with your battle plans is that you are trying to match their strength with strength. Bigger guns, thicker armor, more ships. That is not how you beat the Devourers. Then how do you beat them? So Jin asked. The humans exchanged glances again. This time their smiles were not pleasant at all. You become something they cannot understand, Captain Minho said quietly. You become something that fights back in ways they never expect. You become something they are afraid of. Engineer Yunji pulled out a small device that looked like a children's toy. This is a communication disruptor we built from salvaged Devourer components. When activated near their ships, it causes their networked intelligence to experience what you might call a panic attack. And this, said Tactical Officer Dong Hyun, producing what looked like a simple metal rod, can slice through Devourer armor like it was paper. We reverse-engineered it from their own cutting tools. General Hyunwoo stared at the devices in amazement. How did you acquire Devourer technology? The same way you acquire anything in a war, Captain Minho replied. You take it from your enemies, usually after you kill them. The council members were beginning to understand why humans had been quarantined for so long. They did not just fight wars. They learned from their enemies. They became their enemies. And then they became something worse. Will you help us? So Jin asked finally. Captain Minho looked around at his crew, then back at the council members. We were always going to help you. The Devourers are our problem too. We have just been waiting for you to ask. What do you need from us? Ambassador Taemin asked. Complete military authority over all fleet operations, Captain Minho said without hesitation. No committees. No debates. No questions about our methods. When we give an order, it gets followed immediately. That is impossible, General Hyunwoo protested. We cannot hand over command of our entire military to the only species that has Admiral Chan Wook's flagship appeared 3 days later, and with it came the full horror of human military might. The ship was massive, easily twice the size of the largest council vessels, but it looked like it had been assembled from the corpses of 100 different spacecraft. Weapons protruded from every surface in chaotic patterns. Armor plating had been welded on in thick overlapping layers. Strange symbols and writing covered the hull in dozens of different languages. Mother of stars, General Hyunwoo whispered as he watched the human fleet assemble. What have we done? Behind Admiral Chan Wook's flagship came ship after ship, each one unique and terrifying in its own way. Some looked like merchant vessels that had been converted into flying weapons platforms. Others appeared to be built entirely from salvaged enemy technology. A few defied easy description, as if someone had taken the laws of physics and bent them into new shapes. Council leader Sojin watched from the observation deck as the human admiral's shuttle approached the station. Part of her still hoped this was all a terrible dream, but the energy readings from the human ships were very real. Their weapons showed power levels that should have been impossible. Their drives generated space-time distortions that made the station's scientists weep with confusion. Admiral Chan Wook turned out to be a small, quiet man with gray hair and calm eyes. He spoke softly and moved with careful precision. But when he looked at the tactical displays, his gaze was that of a predator studying prey. Captain Minho has briefed me on the situation, he told the assembled council members. You have approximately 3 months before the Devourer main fleet arrives. That is enough time if you follow our instructions exactly. What do you need us to do? Ambassador Taemin asked. Stop thinking like civilized beings, Admiral Chan Wook replied without hesitation. Start thinking like survivors. The first lesson came immediately. Admiral Chan Wook dismissed the carefully organized fleet formations that the Council had spent years perfecting. Instead, he scattered ships throughout the system in seemingly random patterns. This is madness, General Hyunwoo protested. Our ships cannot support each other if they are spread out like this. Tactical Officer Hyarin, who had been promoted to Human Fleet Coordinator, pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the system. Support each other? You are still thinking about traditional battle tactics. Watch and learn. She activated a simulation that showed Devourer attack patterns. In the display, enemy ships moved in perfect coordination like parts of a vast machine. They concentrated their fire, overwhelmed defensive positions, and consumed everything in their path. Now watch what happens when there is no formation to break, Higher-In continued. The simulation ran again, but this time the defending ships moved independently, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing before the Devourers could respond. They cannot destroy what they cannot predict. Captain Dong Jin of Station Security raised his hand. But how do our ships coordinate without central command? They do not, Admiral Chan-wook answered. Each ship captain makes their own decisions based on local conditions. No battle plan survives contact with the enemy, so we do not make battle plans. We make captains who can think for themselves. The second lesson was even more disturbing. Engineer Yoonji led a tour of one of the human ships, showing the council representatives how human technology worked. The ship's corridors were lined with equipment that had clearly been taken from other species. Weapons, computers, and life support systems from a dozen different civilizations had been integrated into a single functioning vessel. This is all stolen technology, Jin A observed. Borrowed, Engineer Yoonji corrected with a smile. We prefer the term salvaged from the battlefield. When someone shoots at you, anything they lose in the process becomes fair game. She led them to the ship's main laboratory, where human technicians were working on captured Devourer components. The aliens watched in fascination as the humans took apart advanced machinery and rebuilt it for their own purposes. How do you understand technology that is thousands of years ahead of your own? Dr. Kyung-soo from the Council's Research Division asked. We do not understand it, Engineer Yoonji replied cheerfully. We just figure out what makes it work and then make it work for us instead. Understanding is optional. Results are what matter. The third lesson came during the first joint training exercise. Admiral Chan-wook had arranged for a mock battle between human ships and a combined council fleet. The rules were simple. The council fleet would try to defend a space station while the humans attempted to capture it. General Hyunwoo was confident. His ships outnumbered the human attackers 3-1. His captains were experienced professionals who had trained for scenarios exactly like this. His technology was proven and reliable. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. The human ships ignored all conventional tactics. Instead of engaging the defending fleet directly, they scattered throughout the system and began attacking from unexpected directions. Some ships disguised themselves as debris. Others hid in the shadows of asteroids. A few actually allowed themselves to be captured, then revealed that they were packed with soldiers who seized control of the defending vessels from within. When the exercise ended, half the council fleet had been destroyed, and the space station was under human control. General Hyunwoo stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. How? He finally asked. Captain Minho, who had led the human attack, shrugged. You fought the battle you expected to fight. We fought the battle that actually happened. But your tactics make no sense, protested Captain Wanjae, one of the council's best military minds. You broke every rule of engagement. You used deception, trickery, and outright lies. Yes, Captain Minho agreed. That is how you win wars. Honor and fair play are luxuries you can afford when you are not facing extinction. The fourth lesson was the most important and the most terrifying. Admiral Chan-wook gathered all the senior officers for a classified briefing about human military philosophy. Your species have built civilizations based on cooperation and mutual benefit, he told them. That is admirable. But the Devourers are not interested in cooperation. They want to consume you. When facing an enemy like that, you have only two choices. Become strong enough to destroy them, or become too dangerous for them to want to destroy you. What do you mean by too dangerous? Council Leader So-jin asked. Admiral Chan-wook activated a holographic display that showed the last great war between humans and Devourers. The images were 3,000 years old, but they still had the power to shock. The Devourers came to our system expecting an easy victory, Admiral Chan-wook explained. They had consumed hundreds of species. They thought we would be no different. They were wrong. The display showed human ships ramming Devourer vessels at full speed, their crews sacrificing themselves to damage the enemy. It showed boarding parties fighting hand-to-hand in Devourer corridors, using the aliens' own weapons against them. It showed human engineers deliberately overloading their reactors to take out entire enemy formations. You fought like madmen, General Hyunwoo whispered. We fought like humans, Admiral Chan-wook corrected. When our ships were destroyed, we used the wreckage as weapons. When our weapons failed, we used our hands. When our hands were broken, we used our teeth. We never stopped fighting no matter what the cost. And it worked? Ambassador Taemin asked. The Devourers retreated, Admiral Chan-wook confirmed. Not because we were stronger than them, but because we proved that destroying us would cost more than it was worth. They decided to find easier prey. Jin-A had been studying the human tactical manuals during the briefing. What she found there made her stomach turn. These strategies, they assume massive casualties. Your plans call for sacrificing entire fleets. Yes, Admiral Chan-wook said simply. War is not about avoiding death. War is about making the enemy pay a higher price for victory than they are willing to pay. But surely there must be another way, Sojin protested. Some method that does not require such terrible sacrifices. Admiral Chan-wook looked at her with something that might have been pity. Council leader. The Devourers have consumed entire galaxies. They have destroyed civilizations that were millions of years old. They have turned whole star systems into raw materials for their machines. If there was an easy way to stop them, someone would have found it by now. The fifth lesson came when the first Devourer scouts appeared at the edge of Council space. Long-range sensors detected a dozen enemy ships moving through the outer systems, probing defenses and gathering intelligence. This is our chance to test our new tactics, Admiral Chan-wook announced. We will engage the scouts with a mixed human council force. The battle group consisted of 20 ships, 10 from the Council fleet and 10 human vessels. General Hyun-woo commanded the Council ships while Captain Min-ho led the human contingent. The engagement began according to standard Council doctrine. The ships formed up in proper battle formation and advanced toward the enemy at a measured pace. Sensors scanned for weak points. Communication officers coordinated targeting solutions. Everything proceeded exactly as it should have. Then the human ships disappeared. Where did they go? General Hyun. The war began in earnest when the Devourer main fleet emerged from the void barrier, like a storm of living metal. Thousands of enemy ships spread across the galaxy's edge, each one the size of a small moon. They moved with perfect coordination, consuming everything in their path and growing stronger with each victory. The first battles were disasters for the Council forces. Entire systems fell in days. Colonies that had existed for millennia were stripped down to bare rock in hours. Refugee ships fled toward the galactic core, carrying stories of horror that defied belief. But something strange began to happen. The human-led forces were not just surviving the Devourer attacks, they were winning. Captain Yoon-ji led the first successful counterattack, taking her modified cargo ship deep into enemy territory. Her mission was supposed to be reconnaissance only, but she had other ideas. Using a combination of stealth technology and pure audacity, she infiltrated a Devourer command vessel and infected its computer network with a virus that had been growing in human systems for decades. The results were spectacular. The infected command ship turned on its own fleet, destroying 3 vessels before the other Devourers could shut it down. But by then it was too late. The virus had spread through their network, causing chaos throughout the enemy formation. How is this possible? Demanded Admiral Yong-soo of the Centauri Defense Force as he watched the battle reports. Our best cyber warfare specialists could not even understand Devourer computer systems, let alone hack into them. Engineer Dong-hyun smiled as he adjusted the settings on his workstation. That is because you were trying to understand them. We just found ways to break them. He pulled up a display showing the virus structure. This little beauty has been evolving in our computers for 3,000 years. Every time we captured a piece of Devourer technology, we fed it to the virus and watched how it adapted. By now it knows their systems better than they do. The second breakthrough came when Captain Hyrin discovered something that changed everything. During a boarding operation on a damaged Devourer vessel, her team found the enemy's data cores. What they discovered there sent shockwaves through both the human and Council leadership. The Devourers are afraid, she reported to Admiral Chan-wook during the emergency briefing. Not of our weapons or our ships. They are afraid of us, of what we might become. Council leader So-jin leaned forward in her chair. What do you mean? Captain Hyrin activated the holographic display, showing ancient Devourer records that had been recovered from the data cores. 3,000 years ago, when they first encountered humans, something happened that they had never experienced before. For the first time in their existence, they met a species that learned faster than they could adapt. The records showed the progression of the ancient war. At first, the Devourers had easily destroyed human ships and conquered human worlds. But with each battle, the humans had grown more dangerous. They began incorporating Devourer technology into their own designs. They started using enemy weapons against their creators. They even began modifying their own bodies to interface directly with captured systems. By the end of the war, some human soldiers were more machine than organic, Captain Hyrin continued. They had replaced their limbs with Devourer components, rewired their nervous systems to control enemy computers, and uploaded their consciousness into captured AI networks. General Hyun-woo stared at the images in horror. They turned themselves into monsters. They turned themselves into something the Devourers could not predict or control, Admiral Chan-wook corrected. And that terrified an enemy that had never known fear before. The third revelation came from an unexpected source. Ginny had been studying the patterns of Devourer attacks, trying to understand their strategic thinking. What she found was disturbing. They are not trying to win this war, she announced during a strategy meeting. They are trying to prevent us from becoming something worse than they are. She showed her analysis to the assembled officers. Look at their target selection. They are not going after our military installations or industrial centers. They are targeting our research facilities, our universities, our technology centers. They are trying to stop us from learning. Captain Minho nodded grimly. They remember what happened last time. They know that if this war goes on too long, we will become something they cannot defeat. But that is exactly what we want, protested General Hyun-woo. We need every advantage we can get. No, Admiral Chan-wook said quietly. You do not understand. They are not afraid of losing to us. They are afraid of what we will become if we win. The fourth phase of the war began when the humans revealed their true capabilities. Until now, they had been holding back, using only a fraction of their available forces. But as the Devourer attacks intensified, they began deploying weapons and ships that made their earlier technology look primitive. Engineer Yoon-ji's new vessels defied conventional physics. They could phase in and out of normal space, appearing inside enemy formations without warning. Their weapons fired projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them impossible to defend against. Captain Dong-hyun's cyber warfare units had evolved beyond anything the Council could comprehend. They were no longer just hacking enemy computers. They were rewriting the fundamental code that governed Devourer consciousness. Most disturbing of all were the soldiers that Captain Hyrin led into battle. They had begun modifying themselves with captured technology, replacing organic parts with mechanical ones. Some could interface directly with Devourer systems, taking control of enemy ships from the inside. Others had enhanced their bodies to the point where they were barely recognizable as human. This has to stop, Council Leader Sojin demanded during an emergency session. Your people are becoming as alien as the enemy we are fighting. Admiral Chan-wook looked at her with calm, predatory eyes. Yes, that is the point. You are losing your humanity, Ambassador Taemin protested. We are evolving beyond humanity, Admiral Chan-wook corrected. The question is, do you want to survive this war, or do you want to maintain your comfortable illusions about the nature of existence? The fifth phase began when the Devourers made their desperate final gambit. Realizing that they could not win through conventional warfare, they attempted to destroy the galactic core itself. If they could not have the galaxy, they would make sure no one else could either. The attack came without warning. Devourer ships appeared throughout the inner systems, not to conquer but to destroy. They began destabilizing stars, turning them into weapons that would sterilize entire sectors. We have minutes before they trigger a chain reaction that will destroy everything, reported sensor operator Kyung-min from the command center. Admiral. Chan-wook stood silently for a moment, considering their options. When he spoke, his voice was calm and final. Initiate the Prometheus protocol. Sir? Captain Minho asked. Are you certain? Once we begin, there will be no going back. There is no going back anyway, Admiral Chan-wook replied. If we fail here, everything dies. If we succeed, we become something else. Those are the only choices we have. The Prometheus protocol was the ultimate expression of human adaptability. Volunteers from the human fleet uploaded their consciousness into the quantum networks that connected all Devourer technology. They became living viruses, digital beings that could exist inside enemy systems and fight the war on a level that no organic mind could comprehend. Captain Yunji was among the first to make the transition. Her body died as her mind transferred into the network, but her consciousness survived. Transformed into something new, she became a hunter in digital space, tracking down Devourer command protocols and rewriting them to serve human purposes. Captain Donghyun followed, leading a squad of digital warriors into the heart of the enemy's central intelligence. They fought battles that lasted microseconds but covered vast distances through cyberspace, wielding weapons made of pure information. Even Captain Hai-Rin made the transition, leaving behind her enhanced but still organic form, to become something that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. She became a bridge between the physical and digital realms, coordinating attacks that spanned both realities. The battle raged across every level of existence. In normal space, human ships engaged Devourer vessels with weapons that bent the laws of physics. In cyberspace, digital consciousnesses fought for control of the enemy's core programming. In dimensions that had no names, beings that had once been human battled entities that had never been alive. The outcome was never really in doubt. The Devourers had evolved to fight organic beings in physical space. They were not prepared for enemies that could exist as pure thought, that could rewrite reality at the quantum level, that could become more alien than anything the universe had ever produced. When the war ended, the Devourer fleet was silent. Not destroyed, but reprogrammed, converted, made to serve new masters who had once been human but were now something else entirely. Admiral Chan-wook stood in the command center, but his body was mostly mechanical now. His consciousness existed partially in the digital realm, partially in normal space, and partially in dimensions that had no physical laws. When he spoke, his voice came from speakers throughout the ship. "The threat is ended," he announced to the council representatives who remained. "The Devourers will trow." The final battle came not with the roar of weapons or the flash of explosions, but with silence. A terrible, absolute silence that spread across the galaxy as the last Devourer signals went dark. Admiral Chan-wook stood in what had once been the command center of his flagship, though the distinction between ship and crew had become meaningless. His consciousness existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, processing information at speeds that would have destroyed an organic mind. Around him, the beings that had once been his officers continued their work, though it was unclear where their bodies ended and their technology began. "The core network is secured," reported Captain Yunji, her voice emerging from speakers embedded in the ship's walls. Her consciousness had spread throughout the vessel's systems, becoming one with the quantum processors that controlled everything from life support to weapons. "All Devourer command protocols have been rewritten. They are now under our control." "Confirmed," added Captain Donghyun from the digital realm where he now existed. His form appeared as a shifting pattern of light on the holographic displays, a being of pure information that could manifest anywhere in the ship's network. "The enemy fleet has been converted. They no longer recognize their original programming." Throughout the galaxy, the transformation was complete. Devourer ships that had once consumed worlds now served new masters. Their weapons, designed to strip matter down to its component atoms, had been repurposed as tools of creation. Their vast intellects, previously focused on destruction, now calculated ways to rebuild what had been lost. But the victory had come at a price that few could fully comprehend. Council leader So-jin arrived at the human flagship 3 days after the fighting ended. The docking bay looked normal enough, though the air felt strange, charged with energies that made her skin tingle. She was escorted through corridors that seemed to shift and change when she was not looking directly at them. The being that greeted her still called itself Admiral Chan-wook, but it bore little resemblance to the human officer she had met months earlier. Parts of his body had been replaced with technology that defied classification. His eyes glowed with an inner light that seemed to pierce straight through to her soul. When he spoke, his voice came from multiple sources simultaneously. "Council Leader So-jin," he said, inclining his head in a gesture that might have been respect or might have been mockery. "Welcome aboard. I trust you have come to discuss the terms of our new arrangement." "What arrangement?" So-jin asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "The galaxy is safe," Admiral Chan-wook replied. "The Devourer threat has been permanently eliminated. Their technology has been integrated into our own systems. Their knowledge has been added to our databases. Their ships have joined our fleet." He gestured toward the viewports where Sojin could see the transformed Devourer vessels floating in formation with human ships. The distinction between the two was becoming increasingly meaningless. Both types of vessels showed the same hybrid design, the same impossible technologies, the same unsettling ability to exist in multiple dimensions at once. But the price of this victory is that humanity no longer exists as you knew it, Admiral Chan-wook continued. We have evolved beyond the limitations of organic life. We have transcended the boundaries between flesh and machine, between matter and energy, between thought and reality itself. General Hyunwoo, who had accompanied Sojin on this visit, stepped forward. His face was pale, but his voice was steady. What do you want from us? Want? Admiral Chan-wook seemed genuinely puzzled by the question. We want nothing. Need nothing. We are beyond such concepts now. Then why are you here? Ambassador Taemin demanded. Why have you not simply left for some distant part of the galaxy? The transformed being that had once been Admiral Chan-wook smiled, and the expression was more terrifying than any weapon. Because this galaxy belongs to us now. We have paid for it in blood and transformation. We have sacrificed our humanity to save it. That gives us certain privileges. Captain Minho materialized beside his admiral, his form flickering between solid matter and pure energy. The Council civilizations are welcome to continue existing, he said in a voice that echoed strangely. You may keep your worlds, your governments, your peaceful way of life, but you will do so under our protection. Protection from what? Jin'e asked. She had been silent until now, studying the transformed humans with scientific fascination and growing horror. From yourselves, Captain Minho replied. From the next great threat that emerges from the darkness between galaxies. From the temptation to repeat the mistakes that led to this crisis. He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy as it now existed. Human-controlled ships patrolled every major system. Monitoring stations watched every inhabited world. The transformed Devourer fleet had been spread throughout the galaxy in defensive positions that would allow them to respond instantly to any threat. You see, Admiral Chan-wook explained, the problem with your civilization is that it assumes the universe is fundamentally safe. You build beautiful cities and create wonderful art and compose stirring music. But you forget that existence is a war, and peace is only possible when someone else fights that war for you. And you will be the ones fighting that war? Sojin asked. We are the ones who have already won it, Admiral Chan-wook corrected. The question now is what price the galaxy is willing to pay for our continued protection. The terms, when they were finally laid out, were both reasonable and terrifying. The Council civilizations would be allowed to maintain their governments and their way of life. Trade would continue. Art and science would flourish. No world would be invaded or occupied, but humanity, or what humanity had become, would have the final say in all matters of galactic security. No new weapons would be developed without their approval. No exploration would take place beyond the boundaries they set. No contact would be made with species from other galaxies without their permission. You are asking us to become a protectorate, General Hyunwoo said. We are offering you survival, Captain Minho replied. The universe is vast and full of threats you cannot imagine. We have seen what lies in the darkness between stars. We have fought wars on battlefields that exist outside of normal space and time. We have become something that can stand against any enemy. But at what cost? Jin'e whispered. Admiral Chan-wook turned to look at her, and for a moment she thought she saw something of the man he had once been in his transformed features. Everything, he said simply. We have given up everything we once were to become what the galaxy needed. Our humanity, our mortality, our connection to the simple pleasures of organic life. We exist now only to fight the wars that others cannot fight. To face the enemies that others cannot face. And you are content with this? Sojin asked. The question seemed to puzzle Admiral Chan-wook. Content is not the right word. We are what we chose to become. The alternative was extinction for all life in the galaxy. Given that choice, we would make the same decision again. He moved to the viewport and looked out at the transformed fleet. But do not mistake our sacrifice for altruism. We did not save the galaxy out of love or compassion. We did it because the Devourers threatened our potential future hunting grounds. The words sent a chill through the Council representatives. Jin'e was the first to understand what he was really saying. You see other species as prey, she said. Not prey, Admiral Chan-wook corrected. Resources, raw material, potential. The galaxy is full of life that could become something greater, given proper guidance and protection. We intend to provide that guidance. And if we refuse your protection? General Hyunwoo asked. Captain Minho's form solidified slightly, and when he smiled, his teeth looked very sharp. Then you will face the next great threat alone, and there will be a next threat. There always is. The meeting ended with no formal agreement signed, but everyone understood the new reality. The galaxy had been saved, but it now belonged to something that was no longer entirely human. Over the following months, life slowly returned to normal for most of the galaxy's inhabitants. The war damage was repaired with suspicious efficiency. Trade routes reopened under the watchful eyes of hybrid human devourer patrols. Children went back to school and adults returned to their jobs. But everyone knew that they were being watched, monitored, protected by guardians who had sacrificed their humanity to gain the power to protect others. Janae spent her time studying the transformation that had overtaken humanity, trying to understand what they had become. Her research led her to a disturbing conclusion. The humans had not just defeated the devourers. They had absorbed them, integrated their technology and knowledge and capabilities into something new. They are not human anymore, she reported to Sojin during one of their private meetings. But they are not machines either. They have become something entirely new, a hybrid of organic intelligence and artificial capability that exists across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Are they still our allies? Sojin asked. Jinny considered the question carefully. They are our protectors. Whether that makes them our allies or our owners is a matter of perspective. The answer came 6 months